Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Love of Life podcast. And tonight, we're going to talk about what?
We're going to talk about a book called Get Married by Brad Wilcox.
Hey, we did that.
We did.
Got married.
We got married. Why Americans Must Defy the Elites, Forge Strong Families, and Save Civilization. Yeah, so I'm not very far in. I'm like maybe a fourth, if that.
Okay.
But already it's just extremely interesting about marriage. Lots and lots of statistics. But the main thing is that fewer and fewer people are getting married.
Mm-hmm.
And we have an ever-increasing amount of singles and people even older that are single. And the country that's actually the most advanced in lots and lots of single adults, which they call bare branches. They have no like kin around them because they're never been married and they don't have children.
Okay.
Is Japan. And what that means is also their birth rate is really low. So there's all of these grown adults that don't have people to take care of them, people around them, they're lonely. And their whole country is like just declining because they don't have very many people. So
that are getting married?
Yeah, their young people aren't getting married, their people aren't reproducing, but like right now there's all these adults who didn't get married and didn't have children, and so that's like also this, they have all these old people with nobody to take care of them, so it's created new industries, I guess you could say, with like healthcare workers and stuff, but at the same time it's like these people are lonely. And one of the things that this book is talking about is how like there are a lot of elites, mainly left-leaning people in high places, whether they're politicians or it's Hollywood, that are always talking about, you don't need to get married, it doesn't matter, it's not important. But that really isn't true, and statistically, and what you see in all these surveys, like it's clearly not true. It's not better for society. It's not better for individuals. And most of the people that are spouting those things are actually married.
Okay. I feel lost. So can we start at the beginning?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so we're talking about marriage.
Yeah.
And, okay, so you've got a lot of stats,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of statistics, a lot of facts and figures.
Yes.
What's the main crux of this? So he talks
That
about
you
getting
should
married.
get married.
You should get married. Why? So you don't end up alone, single, and no one to help you? Or what is the gist of what Wilcox is talking about? What's he getting at here?
Well, he's studying who is it that is getting married and have successful and healthy marriages. Talks about the divorce rate and who it's higher among. Actually, the 4 categories of people that have the strongest marriages are conservatives, those who are faithful, religious of some sort, not necessarily even Christian, but just religious, college educated, and Asian Americans. Asian Americans aren't as happy as the other 3 categories, but they have the lowest divorce rate.
Okay.
They have a culture that they come from that really emphasizes the importance of the family. So couples feel like they should stay together even if like they're not happy or they don't like each other.
Okay, so yeah, but go back to the beginning here.
Okay.
Why get married?
Why get married?
It's called Get Married,
yes,
right?
It's called Get Married.
All right, so
because
why get married?
You actually will be happier.
Okay.
It's better for you even as you age.
Wow.
People who are married actually make more money. It's a protection against loneliness and poverty, and it helps build a society.
Okay, so apart from the humanistic reasons,
Yeah.
and all those are good reasons. Those are good reasons.
Yeah.
Economics, that's good. It's good to be happy. Yeah, cool. That's really great. Are those like the main tenets as to why he says for people to get married though? Like that's it? Be happy, make money? Those are good things. I like those. This is the love of life. It's a part of life. It's great.
About the importance of family and what it does for individuals and for cultures. Kids how they thrive in a two-parent home. Their likelihood for alcohol abuse, incarceration, all sorts of things diminish. They are much, much lower in two-parent families. There's all these outworking benefits of doing what God's commanded, to be fruitful, multiply. The institution of marriage was set up by God. He's not necessarily talking about, like, the Bible says this, so do it. In fact, he, like, side-skirts some...
The actual reasons of why you should do something.
He does. He's kind of,
Okay.
I mean, I think he's a claiming Catholic, but he sidesteps, like, anything that would be...
Hot button issues
hot-button
and all that.
issues.
Okay.
Yeah, he just sidesteps. He's coming at it from just like he's a sociologist. If you look at...
If you look at data. So he's
data.
okay. He's analyzing data here.
He's analyzing data,
Okay, got
and
it.
he's also trying to debunk what a lot of people are loudly saying in our culture. Social influencers, Hollywood.
Which is what? Be single.
Be single. It's better.
Live-
You can
live your
travel.
life,
You can make a ton of money.
Do what you want to
can-
do.
Yeah, there's a lot of myths that are actually in that ideology that they're spouting, and it doesn't make people happier. It actually doesn't. And
Okay.
a lot of people don't feel fulfilled in life when they make money or having a career like the ultimate, which you're seeing that shift more and more. That young people, when you ask them, like, what will make a meaningful life, they say a good career, a certain amount of money. But then when you look at the data of the people who are the happiest, married people are overwhelmingly happier than single people.
Okay. Interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
From a sociological standpoint, it's interesting. And it's interesting to me in that this is an institution that God set up, that
Yeah.
he gives to us, and it does bring societies along. It does all these good things in the world and for individuals. It's like his ideas are good ideas, and they win the day. They are the best ideas. So even somebody not even coming from necessarily from a Christian reasoning, he's just coming from a look at the data, look at what polls will tell us and what is happening, can say these are all the benefits. Like, communities do better, kids do better, people do better.
That's interesting. That's cool. That's really good.
Do you know what the birth rate in America is right now?
Yes, because you told me the other day. It is 1.9.
1.6. 1.6, which is
Wow.
like a historic low. It was 2 point something in the early 2000s. 2.
So 1.6.
1.6.
Okay, so this is where you and I get into conversations regarding the whole Christian world of babies and being pregnant and having children. We really have a weird stigma. We talk about this a lot.
Mhm.
We have a weird stigma. If you don't want to take it here, we don't have to. So we can not go down this trail.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of trails to go down that we've been talking about lately
Yeah.
as a result of this book and another book that you're reading right now. But there seems to be like a really odd, worldly sort of way that many Christians view children, view large families, and that is the way the world does, the way that they really shouldn't look at family. It's so odd and peculiar to us as we talk about how, there are many Christians that even with our children who have, been, oh wow, that's a lot of kids. Oh man, you guys have a ton. How are you sure? Are things, they almost think they seem like it's bad to have multiple children, or it's a huge burden. I think that's the thing. It's like we've really reached a point in, especially Protestants, where we just don't understand that children are an inheritance from the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And so we think we can, because we're in the day and age of planning out our lives to the point where we think somehow it is viable and right and good for us to know, okay, well, we'll just have 2.5 children, will be, able to make it, and we'll be good after that. God doesn't care. We're in complete control of our reproduction, and we'll do what we want. Like, Protestants have really bought a worldly lie regarding specifically birth control, and this is stuff that, we've had previous podcasts where we realize we've been wrong for many, many years, in our own thinking. But yeah, okay, so I'll pause. And
No, I think that's a good rabbit trail, because I think the thing is that it's a presupposition that children are a burden and you should not have too many because of the culture. And we're susceptible to the culture that we live in. And if we don't know the history of where birth control came from, the idea behind it, Margaret Sanger, eugenics, like all those things, then it becomes just part of the fabric of our society. It wasn't very long ago, pre-sexual revolution, that people had as many children as they had, and it was very common for people to have 8 to 10 children. That was a norm, which now, with 5 children, people are like, you can sometimes see people like counting. So I don't know, these we don't even have that large of a family when you look at our subculture of Christians who have even larger families than us. But if the birth rate now is 1.6, then of course 5 is like way over that. So but yeah, I think the thing is that some of those cultural presuppositions that you should control your fertility, and that's freedom to have less children, you can do more, that a lot of that is short-sighted, and a lot of that ignores what the Bible says about children, about part of our purpose, to be fruitful and to multiply. And while, children do take a lot of care, a lot of time, a lot of work, like they bring a richness. And is it in the Psalms or the Proverbs that talks about your children being with you at the gate, like referencing grown children when you're like, they did a lot of like business and transactions, like the gate was like a marketplace of where they had court and all sorts of things. But like the idea of having your children grown and on your side and with you at the gate, that's a powerful image. And the Lord largely, what we've learned about covenantal faithfulness is makes his goodness known to families as we teach our children, as we raise them in the faith. That is a way that we pass the faith along, and people have long-term faithfulness that way. God can save anybody, whether you're from a Christian family or not, but that is the main means that the faith is carried on, is through our posterity. So I think, there's ideas that we've just bought into that really stem from the culture that we don't think twice about, unless somebody brings them up or you read something that makes you think about them. Like, that's how things came about for us. But it's interesting how much those things have impacted the Christian world, especially Protestants.
Yeah.
How many kids do you want to have?
Right. That is somehow a question. Among Protestants, it's like, how many kids do you want to have? What do you want to do? And it's like, these gifts are from the Lord. And we know at one point in our life, we were prohibiting the act of marriage in the standpoint of we believed somehow that it was within our control to say, hey, we're good with these 3. We don't want any more. We don't need any more. And we don't have to have any more. And so there's that sense of almost playing God, and prohibiting what the good fruit that God can allow in your life.
So you're saying you should have as many children as you possibly can physically have?
No, I think that you can be wise and you can figure things out, and you can, well, for us, we know that when it comes to at least
Hormonal birth control.
hormonal birth control is and has no longer been an option for us.
It's an affront to life.
Yes, because it potentially ends a life. And I think that's the thing that has been the hidden secret, or hidden from the standpoint that it's not talked about in a lot of circles, and it's not really known even from people that have medical backgrounds. I have come to find out where it's kind of news to them because they kind of they hide this information. They hide it in plain sight. Like it's there, but you gotta have to read into the language itself. So yeah, so that's out for us. But no, I don't think it's like it's not a race to see how many children you can have. If somebody wants to do that, knock yourself out. We're not doing that on purpose. But at the same time, we're also open to God's plan and God's gifts and His allowing the womb to be open, as it were. So, yeah, it's just interesting that we are in a culture and have been for a long time where Christians are resisting that fruit. Christians, this goes back to what your stat and why we're even on this trail, rabbit trail, is your stat of 1.6 birth rate for, that's exceedingly low. That's below the replacement level. And you had mentioned Japan, right? I mean, Japan, they have more old people than young people at this point.
Yeah.
Right? And we're on track to meet that.
Yeah, they're lower than us. I don't know if they're 1.2 or 1.4 or something like that. But yeah, and then the effect of society that has is you don't have workers. You don't have lots of ingenuity. Your country's not going to be a leading country. You don't have the people to support that, nor the people to take care of the old people. So there's there's emotional repercussions, there's physical repercussions to not have family connections and people in your life. People struggle with depression because of that, and your economy is impacted by that. So it's like on a micro level, just your own family and thinking about what the Lord teaches, and are you thinking about children in a biblical way, seeing them as a blessing, and understanding that, God, how He views children. It's like your personal life it impacts, but then it also has like this large impact on society. It has this big cultural impact. You can look at a whole country and say, are they striving? Are they going to be a larger country, a smaller country? Are they dissipating into nothing? How are their citizens faring? And kind of goes back to this idea of children. And children that are raised, again, in a two-parent family are set up for so much more success than children in, divorced home, single-parent home. And that structure that God created is just good.
Yeah.
A man and a woman to come together to be in a committed relationship. I mean, even over people who are just cohabitators, like that is not the same thing as marriage. That does not produce the same amount of stability for children, for a society, for even those individuals as marriage. And yes, people can still get divorced, and they do. But the case is that marriage is supposed to be a lifelong bond, and when people do stick with marriage, there are all these outworkings of benefits. I also heard somewhere, I don't remember where, maybe on the radio, that most marriages that are unhappy, if people stay together, that within 5 years, those couples end up being happy. And the divorce rate for people on their second marriages is actually like way higher. You have like statistically the best chance with your first marriage. I don't know if that's because once it's already
once you've already opened up the door for divorce the first time, it makes sense that it's easier to walk through it the second.
Yeah.
You've done it before. You could do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what are let's talk about how we got here. We did you cite any data regarding marriages, like how many people are married in the country? Does he have information regarding that? Like um, as far as the United States is concerned,
Mm-hmm.
are most people between a certain age married, or have we gotten to the point where cohabitation is completely out of control? Or have most or is it has he cited our marriages ending in divorce at a 50% rate? Because that's obvious, that's been a number tossed around for a long time.
So
Is that true?
the highest the divorce rate ever climbed was in the 80s. And part of that was because in the 70s there was kind of this like big cultural push for like marriage is a burden and divorce is easy and it's wonderful, and there was like a best-selling book about like the courage of divorce or something like that. I don't remember what it was called, but basically this book talks about like, you know, when you first get divorced there's a period where like you're sad and kind of depressed, but then you'll look better, you'll be happier, your children will be happier. It's like it was this total myth about all these things about divorce. It was just the literature everywhere was popping up about divorce is so great. So you did see lots and lots of people like in the 70s, but especially the 80s, that was the apotheosis of the divorce rate in the 80s. And that number is declining, but again, it's because less and less people are getting married. We have like an all-time high of people who are never married. And so, yeah, the divorce rate's dropping, but it's kind of a false stat because less people are getting married. I can't remember how many, though. There's a lot of stats in this book.
Does he go into the sexual revolution of the 60s? Does he talk about that at all?
He does not so far.
Okay, interesting.
In this.
Okay.
I don't believe.
Cool.
Yeah, it's more recent that he's talking about. I mean, he goes back as far as the 70s. He was born in the 70s.
Okay.
Um,
Well, you probably, yeah. I mean, it's fine to go back to the 70s and start citing things. It seems that sexually we really got out of control in the 60s. You know?
Yeah.
People started just leading more free lives, free love, all that kind of stuff. Like that mentality and those ideas bled over into the 70s and the 80s, and we're still living out now, a few generations later, the effects of the sexual revolution. I mean, those are still at play. They're still long and loud. that mentality of just, you know, sleeping around, sleeping together, doesn't really matter, that it's interesting how like that understanding of sex really disregards the sacred act of marriage itself, you know? But we've been doing it now for so long, for so many generations, that we have normalized abnormality. You know, we've normalized these sins that the Bible calls sins, sexual immorality of any kind. So it's like, yeah, it's just kind of crazy.
Yeah, well, I think there's, the 60s and 70s, there was lots of fallout there, but even before then, there were factors at play. One thing we talk about is, you know, like how is it that this group of, you know, 5 people got in some back room and then out of that Planned Parenthood was birthed? Or
Right.
How is it that one person gives this speech and then like there's all this cultural repercussion? Like I was just hearing in a different book about actually John F. Kennedy and the speech he gave about how he, even though he was Catholic, you know, don't worry, his Catholicism would have no impact on how he led the country. Like it would be a completely separate issue. It was his private thing, which basically was like, don't worry, my religion doesn't matter. It's useless. It has no bearing on decisions I make or how I lead. So that became like a lot of spiritual leaders embraced that because it was political clout, but it gave them political clout, but it took away any spiritual authority, took away any, like, people were fine with that. Great, you want to have a religion that, like, does nothing, that means nothing, that impacts nothing? We're fine with you having that kind of religion. You can have that, great. So then it's like, what does it even mean to say I'm Christian or I'm Catholic? And that has also a lot to do with the fact that we have a subjective society. Once faith is subjective, it can mean anything to you, whatever it means. It's
Right.
like you're not talking about historical or biblical Christianity anymore at all. You're talking about whatever you think it means. All that to say,
Is
Sorry.
it I thought Christianity was a relationship, not a religion.
well,
You don't want to go down that rabbit trail, do you?
okay, put a pin in that one. We might come back. But all that to say, when we marvel at how is it that just this small group of people with these bad ideas get in a room and then make something huge happen?
Right.
I think what's really happening, like, yes, they do that. It does have this large impact, but it's because a culture is ripe and ready for whatever that untruth is. They're ready for whatever that ideology is. Like, there's enough groundwork that it gains traction because it's like the right thing at the right time to culminate a belief system that people already have, like subjective reality, like evolution. That even played into people accepting some of those ideas. Like,
Yeah.
some races are more important than others, eugenics, like, because of evolution. That's where that thinking comes from. Only in Christianity do you have all men having value given by God because he made them.
Yeah.
Yes, what do you mean Christianity is a relationship and not a religion?
What do I mean?
Yeah.
Well,
What does that mean?
Well, Christianity is both a religion and a relationship. Well, we were talking about this earlier today, and it's just interesting that we were actually complaining. I guess that's the best word we can use here. Complaining about, modern day Protestantism and how we have gotten very simple-minded about a lot of things. We kind of have these little boxes that we like to think this is the orthodox way of thinking, but we say things like, so like example, Christianity is a relationship, not a religion. Growing up, we heard that from various teachers and people and stuff like that, and it seems good. It sounds good, right? But no, Christianity is indeed a religion, and it is the right religion. It is the only religion to believe in, and it's also a relationship with Jesus Christ that is brought to you by His Spirit, who made you and transformed you and turned your eyes to see that He is the risen Lord and Savior. But it's also a religion. We meet in buildings, at least we should. We meet in a place where we are given sacraments. Another word that I don't think most Protestants, you start saying words like sacraments to a lot of Protestants and they look at you like you're some high church weirdo, Yeah, so anyway.
In that world, I think there's just kind of a bad taste in the mouth about words like tradition or religion or sacraments, but those things are not bad. Like,
right,
part of that
they're
is
good
because of the influence of really, again, kind of the culture that we think that there's this highlight on. It's somehow more spirit-led if it's like spontaneous, when really like the Spirit brings order and beauty. And so tradition or religion, it's not like you're going to be a Pharisee because you are talking about religion, or it's just going to be religiosity.
Right.
Like, religion is
somehow though
they
teachers
become bad words.
in the last 20 or 30 years have basically, they've done weird things. We're really getting off the marriage talk here.
Okay.
This is like becoming something else than
Your soapbox.
a different, my soapbox, but a different podcast altogether, which we can totally do this one at some point. But it's just bizarre to me that we have listened to teachers in the last 20, 30, 40 years basically be like, oh, God's commandments, don't be a Pharisee. Like, what? Like, we're called to follow God's commandments.
If you love me.
If you love me, obey my commandments. So there's just like, there's all of these weird little things among Protestants that I look at now, being a Protestant myself. We are both Protestant. We were raised in the Protestant world. Yes, that's great. And it has a rich, wonderful heritage, and there's some great things within Protestantism. But man, like in the last 30 or 40 years, we have become ignorant of a lot of things. And we have fallen into the trap of believing these very simplistic phrases that really just make good marketing kind of things that people will remember. You know, once saved, always saved. We're not going down that rabbit trail. But you know, like Christianity is a religion, not a relationship, or is a relationship, not a religion, or vice versa. Yeah, it's those kind of things that are like,
unpack that a little. Think about that. Is that really true?
Is that absolutely true? Is that something? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think part of that is, especially the mainline Protestant denominations have embraced a lot of unbiblical ideas.
And it all started with, you told me this earlier.
Yeah, I just heard this.
This is
in the 1970s, a lot of the mainline Protestant denominations started ordaining women. And since then, you can see like this decline of all these other things that they've succumbed to, having lots of different, brands of them. There's a brand of Lutherans that have started ordaining homosexuals and even transgender people to be bishops and stuff. And you just see like this unfaithfulness to the Bible in these denominations largely. And it started, like really the trend started with that, where you're caring more about like what's culturally relevant than what does the Bible actually teach. And then along with that, in recent polls where people are asked different questions about like people that claim to be Christians, one of the questions that was asked was Jesus made by God? And a lot of people answered, yeah, they thought he was. Where it's like, no, it's the Arian heresy, and that was already debunked. Like in the 1st or 2nd century, maybe the 3rd. I don't know.
Yeah. I
do better when I read than when I listen. But that all kind of goes back to, we live in a subjective culture. So people are like, does it even matter? They don't even care. Another question was, is there original sin? And a lot of claiming Christians said no, which again is a Pelagian heresy, which was debunked by Augustine. So it's like, there's all these things that if we knew our church history better, if we were more faithful to read our Bibles, we should know. We should be able to recognize.
Yeah.
Which says a lot.
Because if not, the lies that were taken care of centuries ago, they come back and people, they don't know their history.
They don't know their history, and they live in a subjective culture where they really don't know that it matters. But we do not live in a subjective world. We live in a world that has absolutes. We live in a world that God made, and there's absolute right and there's absolute wrong. And there are things that are factual and things that are not. So
we've bought the Oprah Winfrey lie of your truth and my truth, anybody's truth.
Yeah. How do you see these things though? Like, we're born into this world and we're born into this culture, and there are all these thoughts and ideologies floating around. How do you know, okay, this actually stems from Rousseau. This actually stems from, or hey, that's not biblical. Like, I've always heard it and it sounds good, but it's not true. How do you know?
Yeah.
I'm asking. How do you know?
You're asking me what? How do I know what?
How do you know these things aren't good and right? Like, what are the navigation tools, I guess?
The navigation tools, well, I mean, for us, first and foremost, is the foundation of the Word of God. But it's really, it's studying history. It's studying the things that, okay, where did this thinking come from? Like, what, for instance, like right now, why are we in such a society that can't figure out simplistic things like, what is a woman? Like, simple things, right? Like, this was figured out a long time ago. The people that are not trying to figure it out or are confused by it, I don't even want to say they're confused. I think that some of them are just downright evil.
Or deceived.
Or both. Or all of it. or maybe they're massively confused, or they're just completely dishonest. Because this thing is plain in nature, what things are. But yeah, so it's understanding the history of well, where did these ideas come from? You know, like tracing back, for instance, Planned Parenthood. Like, where did that come from? Oh, it came from Margaret Sanger. Oh, Margaret Sanger and a couple of people got together and figured like we need to have this eugenics program and we need to, you know, blot out the black race and do all these things. And yeah, so I think it's understanding history, you know. For instance, you know, growing up, I knew there were people that, you know, were like live-ins, people that like lived in with one another or whatever. And I thought, how did society change from a long time ago when this wasn't accepted at all?
Mm-hmm.
And then understanding, oh, the sexual revolution of the 60s. And we're just downstream many generations later. Oh, this is why now even people that are Christians or nominal Christians, this is why they're accepting the farce of the day. It's so permeated in our society. So I think studying history in conjunction with the Word of God is the way in which you can debunk the lies, the myths, the obvious things that are wrong.
Yeah.
But you can, when you understand systemically where it comes from, then you can go, oh, okay, this is how it was made in the kitchen of evil.
Yes.
These are the
Seems
ingredients
like
that it took. These are the philosophers. This is Rousseau. This is Darwin. This is the reason why things are the way that they are.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I also think...
Was I missing something?
No, you said it. I mean, reading the Bible. I mean, that is so huge. There's so much that's so plain in the Bible. And, I mean, some things are harder to understand. But there's a lot that's just really plain. And we need our minds to be renewed. And the best defense against, you know, cultural thinking is to just keep reading the Bible. There's a lot of things that it's like, wait, does the Bible really mean that?
Right.
Yeah, the Bible does really mean that. And it's more and more countercultural to be obedient to this or to that. But God so honors when we're obedient. He loves that. It delights him. It's the way that we show God that we love him. It's how we glorify him, to obey him, to do what he commands. And he blesses that. So anyway, I find that, I mean, I've been reading the Bible like all my life, not always as faithfully as I would like, but I'm constantly seeing new things. It's like, it's a treasure that you cannot plumb the full depths of. It's deeper, it's richer, and then like, especially I'm doing a Bible reading plan, and like when it juxtaposes like some Old Testament scriptures and New Testament scriptures, it's like, then you start to see things, you're like, oh my gosh, I wouldn't have even seen like that thread, but like it's there and it's there. It's richer all the time. There's always something new. We need to continually be reading the Word, ever reading the Word, always reading the Word.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, anything else about get married, or is that good?
If you're not married, get married. If you're married, have kids.
If you have kids,
teach them, train them, baptize them.
Baptize your babies.
Yeah, that's good. And read the Bible daily. Read the Bible daily to the best of your ability. I have to reset my plan all the time because I won't get to finish one of the days, but it's the habit of reading it every day. That's so good.
Read it every day. All right. Thank you very much.